Inshallah and Ashe. Blessings to you, my energetic beings, and welcome to Meet Me for Coffee. Today, my guest is all the way from the UK. She's a business energetics mentor, rethinking the purpose and the place of business in society. And she works with conscious entrepreneurs and innovators to design businesses that are really part of the solution to our collective needs in the 21st century. So by creating and designing businesses from a place of connection to the natural world to bring about positive change, she then fosters creativity through creative expression that's actually unique to each individual. And she came into entrepreneurship through a long history in charities where creating positive change in the world is really her guiding ethos. So she's brought this principle into her work, helping her clients act on their power to transform in the world. And it really is imperative that business comes back into balance with a wider collective need for our human, ecological, society, social, and also more importantly for myself, spiritual levels and just conscious design, using energetics, which I love, to support us all in accessing a deeper level of personal wisdom to find the balance. So let's welcome Polly. She has a wealth of experience in marketing, charities, business development, public affairs, even community development to complement her mentoring of entrepreneurs. So let's welcome Polly once again to the stage.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. I'm so pleased you invited me.
I'm super excited that you answered the call. Can you share some insight into business energetics and the mentoring, like the process of this rethinking and the purpose?
Well, I think the most important thing is that it's coming back to trusting yourself. We live in a world where we're told what we need to do all the time, and we have this inner voice with this inner wisdom that has far more intelligence than we can possibly muster at a collective level. So we're hugely intelligent, and we have so much wisdom at our disposal, but we don't use it because it's scary to do that. You know, it's like to listen to yourself and follow yourself as opposed to following what everybody else expects of you is a huge thing to come to terms with. And it is a seismic moment in most people's lives when they decide that I'm going to listen to myself over somebody else, because it really defines all your relationships. It really defines how you perceive the world and how you show up in the world. So it's a really big thing to turn inwards. And that's the first part of working with energy in business, is to turn inwards and look at, who am I? What do I know to be true? What can I sense or feel to be true? And how can I respond from that place rather than what I am expected to do by my family, by society, by my friends, whatever it is? It's like coming back to that, moving from, I call it moving from the center, moving from the core. It's like making all your decisions from your core power, your core energy. And that's the thing in order to do that in a business context, there's an awful lot of unlearning that has to happen. You know, we can't just suddenly go, oh yeah, that's all right. I'm just going to discount all of this stuff that I have heard, some of which I have paid to hear, that has influenced how I think my business ought to work, in order to listen to myself. Because nobody at that point, when you're still on that threshold, trust themselves enough to think that they are the expert. So it's quite a big unlearning process that has to go on.
Do you find that you have to unpattern from a belief system, like a conditioning from your childhood? Is that kind of how far back you go into that?
It can be. I mean, everybody's different. And the extent to which they're almost debilitated within their business by things is completely unique to everybody. So, I've certainly had to go back into my childhood in order to see some of those patterns of where have they come from, so that I can actually finally move beyond them. But a lot of it, the surface level certainly is, we've come out of a period, particularly with online businesses, we've come out of a period of probably about 10 years where information was thrown at us. Everybody had some sort of free lead generating piece of information we were expected to consume. And we've all consumed a lot of information. And that information, whether or not you choose to believe it or you choose to act on it, it's still in there. It's still in our heads. It's still in our wiring. And we're still taking that into account. I think from a spiritual point of view, we have to be, everybody who's aware of what they're doing needs to be very conscious of the extent to which they're contributing to that level of clutter we all carry about with us by saying that something is absolute, or this is the only way to do it, or these are the exact steps you need to follow in order to. That's stuff that we all hold onto. And whether or not we believe it, we put it into practice in our businesses. Now, when you're choosing to operate from a space of values and you're carrying all of that, it distorts how your values work into your business. So your business struggles. So yes, there's a lot of unpatterning that has to happen, but the biggest part of it is the most obvious and immediate part of it is on that. What have I absorbed that I need to unlearn?
So this is where I'm heading. So do you find that there's obviously different energetic centers in the body that are totally out of balance, kind of where it kind of resides in the body as well?
Yes, it does. That and you get that inability. The one that I get with all of my clients is that I'll be talking to them and we'll be getting deeper and deeper into it. And they'll start to go, and it's just like every single one of them is just like, yes, you're struggling to bring that thing from your heart and up through your throat. So the throat is one of the biggest ones. But I think more to do with that is where, if you think about the energetic centers that govern what we do, then business has been governed from a very solar plexus energy for a long time, but it's transitioning into a much more heart-based energy where why we do things is completely changing. And as that happens, the whole system needs to rebalance. Because when you've been operating from the solar plexus and you've been operating from a space of will and determination, and then you're moving into a space of, I'm doing this because I want to make a contribution, then everything has to rebalance. So that is the biggest thing. But as well as the human aspect of our energy centers, then there's also the business energy centers itself, and they've all got to be rebalanced as well. And I find that those are the ones that can get really distorted and imbalanced and out of whack. So that's one of the things that I work on quite a bit is like, how do we restore the energy centers of the business itself?
So would it be more of the outer, sounds like the outer energetic fields is kind of?
Yeah, it can be all sorts of that, but I work quite a lot with the business energy body in order to allow that movement. And you find that things get, the beliefs that we've adopted or the systems that we've put into place because we have adopted a belief of that system, those are the ones that actually then have an impact on the energy body of the business. And then they will have a knock-on impact on you as the person who is driving that business. So it's kind of tricky to keep that because you're not just balancing one energy body, you're balancing two. And you're balancing two who are working collaboratively in order to. So do you see what I mean? It's like there's no way that you can do this off the peg because everybody's got a completely different situation and everybody's got a completely different blend of energies going on.
Absolutely. So let's chat about creating and designing businesses from a place of connection to the natural. I'm thinking like the organic to bring about positive change.
So I think where I started on this journey of thinking about how do we use nature as an inspiration, as a field of research called biomimicry. I don't know if you've come across that, which is looking at how natural systems operate, and therefore what can we learn from them in terms of design. Now, it's quite an intellectual process, but I always think of it as the one that always speaks to me is if you've ever watched a starling murmuration, and you watch those hundreds of thousands, sometimes, birds moving in total unity, and you get the same thing in shoals of fish. They all move together as one. How does that happen? Is somebody in charge of that? And it turns out that actually that it's moved from the center. So a whole, 100,000 starlings will move because one bird in the center has adjusted the angle of their flight by an inch, and everybody goes. So that, to me, is an example of how you can think about your leadership, for the sake of argument. So you can think, how do I choose to lead? Because you don't always have to lead from up front. You can lead from the middle. But the design needs to be, the way I work with my clients is to say, right, I want you to call in this energy. I want you to feel this energy. I want you to understand how it wants to be expressed, because, everybody has a different personality and they choose to express it differently. And the same is absolutely true of your business. So it's like, if you can feel that energy, which you felt anyway, but, you consciously want to feel it. So you feel that energy and say, well, what does it feel like? Because then you can understand what it naturally wants to do. Is it naturally a very social energy? Does it want to work with lots of people? Does it want to be in a bustling, lively environment? Or is it a much more introverted energy that wants to go deep with one person? Yeah. So we can learn from that. And then you can think about, and at that point, I find that you get an awful lot of, maybe you get animals showing up, or maybe you get plants particularly showing up, that actually give you better understanding of how to translate that into form. So maybe you'll have an oak tree that comes up for you and you go, well, okay, so that's an oak tree is about presence. Or maybe you have a flower that comes up that is really showy, and it's about saying, okay, so I want to be really vibrant. So it's understanding, nature at the moment. Nature is our way of interpreting. It's our guide into our businesses. I see a future where actually we are working so closely with nature that we are beginning to build our businesses into the ecosystems that sustain us. So they're part of the full cycle. But, we're a way off that yet. We need to learn to listen to ourselves and to energy around us better in order to be able to work with it. So that, at the moment, my focus is very much on helping people to interpret energy to then bring it into whatever form that means. So that might mean, okay, for some businesses, it might be, right, I need to work in groups. And I need to nurture groups. For others, it's like, no, I actually need to be on my own. And I actually need to work with my clients in a more remote way. And that's valid and it's totally okay. But you'll never give yourself permission to do that unless you really sit with what feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we need to give ourselves more time and more space to tune into those instincts and really trust ourselves and go with our feelings. A lot of people don't pay attention to their feelings. And I feel like that's like our best alert signal of whatever it is we're creating, if we feel into things.
Absolutely. So, but actually, you have a lot of cultural patterning around not listening to your feelings in business. So I remember a few years ago back, Gary Vee saying, there's no place in business for emotions. I was like, what? I could not disagree more that, there is plenty of space. And in fact, if you don't listen to your emotions, you don't listen to your feelings, which are, there's slightly different things, because you're sensing things with your body all the time. If you ever walk into a room and you go, no, I need to be out of this room, that's a sort of signal that you probably will go, I'm listening to that one. You might force yourself and then you probably have a horrible experience. But you know that, but most of the time there's a much more subtle level that's going on, that if, as you said, if we give ourselves the space and time to tune in, there's a wealth of understanding about what we're doing that is available to us, that is far beyond our intellectual capacity to understand. And that opens up the door for us to not know everything, not have all the details to hand, not have everything at our fingertips, and still do it.
Absolutely. Go on the adventure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that thing of being kind of slightly blind to what's coming scares the living daylights out of you until you shift your perspective and decide that it's an adventure.
Exactly. I always say there's excitement on the other side of fear, or magic on the other side of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how did you do the entrepreneurship through the charities, and kind of what does that look like? It's just I've just had this winding path, of things that have blended together. And it's been kind of odd to watch everything weave itself together, because I've just gone where things took me. So I spent a long time working in an environmental sector, and then I worked with homelessness, but both of those things were about finding the positive in really dark situations, particularly when I was working with homelessness. You were pulling people back from the very brink of, and there were so many who were like, they knew that they had been saved from no longer being here, basically. They were that desperate. So, and for me, that work is about impact. It's about contribution. And when you're working in charities, then you see people who are very passionate. A lot of people are very wounded as well, but very passionate about helping people and situations and whatever to have the best possible chance. And there are a lot of people who work in charities who get walked over because they're not paid a fair wage. And yes, but they're passionate, so it's okay. And it's not okay. That's not okay. But the point is that that's always about more than the money. And when you come into business, the world of business, it's all about the money. That's everything. We're taught to value business purely on financial and money. It's like, how many likes have I got? How many followers have I got? How much income have I made? Have I made 6 or 7 figures this year? You can do 6 or keep seeing them, 6 or 7 figures within 9 days or whatever. And you just think that's not what matters. As we're moving from this into this heart-based, heart energy that we're bringing into business, we're moving out of the money and we're moving into the contribution and the impact. And that has such a massive impact on how we then think about business and work within business. So it's been really interesting to have that charity background and looked at the ups and the downs of that model. And then when I was put in a situation where I had to choose to move on or do my own thing, it made sense to do my own thing, but it still took me a fair few years to step out of that model myself. I started doing the very conventional stuff, and I found it as suffocating as I found working for somebody else. It was kind of hard. So that, for me, my journey has been about loosening the reins and learning to work differently and trust that I have the skills and the capacity to work in this way without freaking out, because it's very different. Yeah. It's part of holding that space and also holding the time. So can you share the conscious design of how you use energetics to support really all of us in accessing a deeper level of this personal wisdom to find our inner balance, especially when it comes to business, like you said, the 6-figure quick overnight income kind of stuff, because that really is fading away. To me, that right there is an alert signal that I don't want to, for me, that I won't participate in.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's the first step to all of this is to actually become aware of that. So when you start to hear the noise for what it is and what it means to you, to be more precise, when you start to hear that and you go, I don't hold with that anymore, then you know that you're in a position to say, okay, I'm ready to make the space and the time to do this in a different way. If you're not ready to truly make that space, then you will always want to move back into the old way of doing things. And I also find that in terms of being able to do stuff, there has to be a bit of a hiatus, because you've got to have enough of a space to let everything go so that you've got the objectivity to be able to see what's coming. And that's being honest with yourself. I mean, you've got to be honest about what your values are. You've got to be honest about what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to create for yourself. So many people want more space in their businesses. We do not design space into businesses. We want them to be as productive as possible. But there is a big difference between productivity and creativity. And most of us are less inclined to be productive in the conventional sense, but we are desperate to become creative. So you have to unleash that creativity. You have to let it have a space in your business. And you will never do that from an intellectual perspective, because you can't tap into the unlimited possibilities. And this is the most difficult one to wrap your head around, because if you work in an online business, which a lot of us do, and we have a very strong online presence, then there are a perceived limited number of ways that you can take your business. You know, there are certain things, places, platforms, things that you can do. But everything is energy. Everything is energy. Your business is energy. And energy is unlimited. It can do anything. So we have, in the process of untethering ourselves from the idea that there's a finite way of doing things, we have to learn to listen for the infinite variety of things that we can do. So no two businesses will ever look the same and should ever look the same. I mean, there's off-the-shelf things, rubbish. So when you're listening to it, you're listening for the cues about the way in which you want to express that energy, rather than what systems do I need to have in place. Because if you go systems first, you're basically putting energy into a box that doesn't fit in, and it stops it moving. So your business stagnates because the energy can't flow. So you want to create the systems around the energy. What that means is, let's say that you like to write and you want to communicate with a community through a newsletter. That's very valid, but you'll have a whole load of systems in place that are telling you should be emailing very regularly. This should be the format. It should be this long. You should be expecting an open rate of this and a click rate of that, and all of these sorts of things. Whereas actually you may find, shock horror, that if you listen to how the energy wants to come out, it wants to come out once a month. No more, no less. And it wants to come out as 3 pages. You know, and that's valid. So why not design your business around creating content that comes out once a month? If it's very impactful, people will be looking for it. But equally, you can shake things up and shake the energy up and get it moving a bit by saying, instead of me writing a 500-word email, because that's going to hit the SEO search engine optimization, etc. I'm going to write a 2-line email. How much can I get into that? So there's lots of things that we can think about when you know what the energy feels like. You start to say, okay, what does that actually mean? How do you want to communicate? Do you want to be up there on a podcast? Do you want to be up there on stage? Do you want to be writing a book? Do you want to be, it's just like anything can come up from that point. When you ask an open-ended question of the energy, what does it want to be? And then you can start to find something that you've never seen before, you've never experienced before. And you find the will to test it out and play with it and see what happens and go from there. And that's how new stuff is created. You have to color outside the lines.
Yeah, you have to go for the adventure, not the programming, kind of immerse yourself in the creativity aspect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So is there anything else that you feel that you would like to share with my audience and my listeners?
I think the message that, I think is the most important is that when you are doing something you've never done before, it's going to feel different. And when it feels different, you want to step back from the different because it's uncomfortable. But what we want is to understand that discomfort, that imbalanced feeling is your space between the old and the new. And it's your passport into the new. So if you can sit with that discomfort, which is not easy, it's very challenging for us, but if you can sit with that discomfort, then you will find yourself moving into the new. And that just steps you on to a completely different pathway. And there'll be things that are available to you there that you would never have ever believed were available to you from where you've come from.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with all of it. 100%. Super excited. Gratitude for you being here today. So I will have Polly's information to connect in the show notes. Be absolutely sure to reach out for her if you are an entrepreneur or just really a human, really, who's interested in transforming the world with positive change and light and utilizing what I would call the balancing the spirit and the character and the magic that resides within you. And as always, inshallah, Ashe, and I will see you on the other side. Blessings to you.